Hey guys, how's it going? And welcome to a new week of Force of Will news. So there's quite a few things that happened over the past week. We had an ARG, our first GP. We have a new letter from the CEO going over quite a few important things, and other little news tidbits that I'm going to be going over. So this one will be a little bit longer. If you're specifically just interested in the GP and ARG, like top deck lists and things like that, you can go ahead and skip ahead to this point right here. It'll start with the GP and then move to the ARG. So, it feels like that's a good order. If you want the specifics of both of those, including the top 8 deck lists for the GP and the top 4 for the ARG, and other information regarding them, the ruler breakdown, card breakdown, etc., I'll have linked below both of our articles we made, as well as a link for the article version of just the news going over the summary of the CEO letter and the other bits of news as well. So 3 different articles to check out if you guys are interested. And as always, if you guys would like to support us, we have our patreon.com/tcgscrubs, where we have our weekly mini podcast we upload on there, as well as other bonus features that you guys can check out on there. We'll start with that. There was the stream at the GP, and at that stream, Jeremy, DMO73, interviewed the CEO. And a couple of interesting things that were brought up that I noticed was he didn't outright deny the possibility of more Senate rulers in the future. He said it was a very popular program, and so it might be something they introduce later, possibly after they sort of reconstruct Wander and stuff like that, so they can find out what rulers should be ascended and all that to help balance out the format. So that'd be really cool, I think, to see again. I felt that was really well done, a really neat idea in general, and it helped with the singles market on all fronts, and it helped people get their favorite rulers, different versions, better versions, and all that. So I hope so. And same thing with who's asked about Uber resonators, if we'll ever see one of those again, like we saw back in I think it was it Owl's Cluster or Grim Cluster? I forget, but there was one of those, and so he didn't rule out that possibility as well. So that'd be kind of cool to see. It sort of leads into the CEO letter where he went over quite a few things, so we'll just go over a quick summary of each one by one. If you want the full thing or more detailed summaries, different things like that, just click on the news article. I'll have a link to this CEO letter as well as the written out summaries of the whole thing. But the first part was talking about the limited format at the GPs. Basically, he just reiterated why they supported, because of the Rhea cluster being sort of built more to lend itself toward the limited format, he said. And he said the reason he wanted to do it at GPs is because he wanted the sealed GPs to take place after new sets came out, because sometimes people are not sure what cards to put into their deck and they're still figuring that out. So switching to sealed takes that out. However, like the Richardson one right here doesn't come out anywhere near a new set coming out, so not quite. I think that's just a random thought he maybe had regarding it, but and that he felt that limited and specifically sealed is still competitive and it's not random like people think. And he did say he would be actually updating the rules so that competitive events that run sealed can only use draft rulers. You cannot use rulers you pull in your pack. So that's cool that they're actually updating that across the board, so that'll help out a lot. So basically just reiterating why they're doing limited format like we had heard before. Cool thing now is he's talking about Wanderer format next. So Wanderer, he said that they're going to be lending more support for. They've been testing it more, finding out what cards they're going to ban and whatnot. He said the ban list for Wanderer is going to be announced at the release of this next set, the Time Spinning Witch. He acknowledged that the format right now is a bit too powerful with certain combos and different things like that, and certain rulers that had things banned or are banned in New Frontiers that aren't banned in Wanderer. They want to lend more support to that, including continuing doing promos and things like that, and introducing it more at competitive events like GPs and things like that. So that's actually pretty exciting. I kind of like the idea of that. I wasn't a big fan of it when I played Pokemon. They usually at GPs and stuff did what would be considered like New Frontiers of this for day 1, and then day 2 would have been Wanderer for Pokemon, and I was never a big fan of that because I didn't want to get into the old stuff. But Force of Will is still new enough that's not that big of a deal, and I have a lot of old Force of Will stuff, so I'd be down for that. It'd be pretty exciting to see that alternating format and being able to construct 2 decks and not have to do sealed. So next he talked about the organized play and judge program. He had said at the beginning that he was going to talk about the judge and organized play programs, but it looks like he just talked about the judge program, unless I'm misinterpreting or missing something. But for the judge program, he basically acknowledged that they're going to be overhauling the judge program, it sounds like, and how they're going to do a better management system for the judge program, which is going to be another tier on their founding beliefs sort of structure that in the next CEO letter, he'll address that. So hopefully that'll include sort of the new judge program and how they're going to be managing that. And he said he wants to do more support for the judges, including himself helping out with it. So that's pretty exciting, because that's something that's in dire need of help. And the judge program, I'm going to keep relating to Pokemon because that's the one I'm most familiar with. But with that one, Pokemon was actually a cool thing. Like, I know a lot of people are like, oh, I want to be a judge. You got to take this test and know all this different stuff. And it was a cool thing to become it. And Force of Will feels a little bit less like that. It feels a lot more like a chore than a fun thing to do. Not necessarily fun is the right word, but you guys know what I mean. Next, he talked about the Grand Prix, World Grand Prix specifically, and that they want to change it so the World Grand Prix is less competitive and more like a celebration of the game. Which at first I was like, I wasn't too fond of that, but then he said they want to make a separate event, which will be the competitive version where they will find the best Force of Will player. And so that's cool. So they'll have a separate event that'll be what World does now, essentially, I feel like, or kind of what World does now. And they'll have the Grand Prix, which will celebrate things like Wanderer and as well, he said. So I was thinking in my head, like, oh, it'd be cool if the World Grand Prix was this big event where it did constructed for New Frontiers, constructed for Wanderer, had sealed or draft, and had maybe other things that all just sort of, like you said, celebrate all the different nooks and crannies and aspects of the game. I'm not quite sure what he might mean by celebration. It could be entirely different than what I'm thinking in my head, but it'd be cool if it was more of a big, just like, event that brought everyone together type of thing, which I'm sure is what they're going for. And then separately, if you guys just want to follow the competitive thing, you'll still be able to do that, whereas the more casual people or just the player base in general can follow the World Grand Prix. Next, he addressed a lot of questions people had about in develop or long since heard of projects, so I'll just rapid fire through them. Force of Will Battle Simulator, the one that was on the computers where you had to put in the other person's IP address to play against them, he said they're not working on it. It's essentially dead. They might come back to it later, but I doubt they will unless the game suddenly breaks in popularity, because it's hard to make something like that. And they probably are like, people are using Untap and Lackey anyways, no reason to work on it, so. The Force of Will movie, he said, yep, they pulled out of it. They're not doing it anymore. The individual studios are still going to be producing or might still be producing the individual short films that they were making beforehand, and so we might see those at some point, but it's no longer tied to Force of Will, the company, or anything like that. He said they just didn't have the time and budget to do it, and especially to make it tie into the Force of Will brand like they wanted to. Regarding a Force of Will anime, an anime based on Force of Will, he said right now they're not looking to work on it, just once again, budget and time and just the amount of effort that would have to go into it. Maybe at some time in the future, he said they might look into it, but at this point in time, just it's not something that's on the table. Next was, if you guys remember, they had teased a miniature board game for Force of Will a long time ago, and we haven't heard anything since. He did confirm it is still in development, and they're actually going to be putting it up on, it's going to be done by a third-party company, and it's going to be released on Kickstarter sometime before this summer, so obviously, we'll keep you guys up to date on that, so you don't have to worry about keeping an eye out for it. But that'll be kind of cool. I'm really curious what is going to go behind that, but I'm pretty excited to see about that. Next is Architects. He said that Architects, if you guys remember, they announced it's going to come out in like October or something of last year, and then it was pushed later to November. I could have this wrong, but it was pushed to November and then pushed to February, and then we haven't heard anything since. Essentially, he's saying right now it's switching more towards an LCG rather than TCG. So in June, they're going to release 4 constructed decks for it and not have any sort of booster packs or anything, at least on the onset. They might do something later, and I guess would transform it into a TCG at some point, or keep it as an LCG. It was kind of weird how it was read, and that could just be me once again. Well, I guess he did say at the end that they want to shift from, after it's been out for a while, they'll shift it from a limited static release to a regular TCG with its own organized play circuit in the future. So That'll be interesting. It's kind of disappointing because that was the one I was most looking forward to out of Casters and Architects. I thought Architect gameplay actually sounded really interesting, and I was kind of excited for that. So we'll see how that goes. And it's funny because he said that, unfortunately, one of the reasons that's been delayed and that they're switching to an LCG temporarily and then transition to a TCG is because they just didn't have the team members to spare for it, which contradicts what they had said before, where they said they're not using any Force of Will personnel that would be working on Force of Will on these games. They had separate teams that were working on them. So if you already had a team for it, unless team members quit or they reorganized and brought them back to Force of Will or something like that, nothing should have ever affected it. So it's kind of interesting. So I'm kind of bummed out about that, but at least we have a new release date. Hope that definitely won't change at some point. And lastly, Caster Chronicles. So he basically just, it was really weirdly worded, but essentially they said it basically it's just they're working on it. They're figuring out where to market it. They said it's doing decently in Japan, and they're deciding right now whether or not it's marketable outside of Japan. Obviously, it's being released outside of Japan. I bought a booster box, and I'm gonna buy the next set's booster box and different things like that. Hopefully, this doesn't mean that they're gonna take it out of the U.S. market. I don't think so, because it's sold very well from all accounts. But if you guys have followed it at all, they've been releasing specific sets and promos and different things like that that were exclusive to Japan for the game. So it could just be that they're testing how these sort of random weird sets and just releasing the core stuff to us in the US. So I'm curious to see how that goes. We're nearing the next set release. If you guys have been following my spoiler videos, I release them every Friday going over the past week's cards that they spoiled, and they have a lot of cool, interesting stuff going for it. A lot of stuff reminiscent of Yu-Gi-Oh! And different things like that. So I'm kind of excited about it. So hopefully that stays popular in the US, or popular enough. So that was everything for the CEO letter. Quite a bit in there, like I said before. So moving on to the GPs. We'll start with the Atlanta GP that just happened. So there was 100 people in attendance, and pretty interesting breakdown. So I'll start with the ruler distribution. There was 31 Farers, 14 Lumias, 11 Ayus, 10 Evil Trees, and 7 Foxes, and then the rest sort of just broke down from there. And then there's if you go to our article, there's an interesting card distribution showing the most played cards and stuff. Most obviously, the most played ones were Severing Winds, Sacred Elf, Otherworld Dreams, and those were the main top ones. Obviously, there's other high played ones, but going into the top 8, first place we had Aaron Miles with his Lumia list. They came in with some interesting Lumia lists. Once again, I recommend going and checking out the list. They were pretty cool. A lot of dependent on the Lumia Resonator from Vingo 3. Some interesting stuff with Mosasaurus. The first place Aaron Miles, I'll mention it if you guys watch the stream that DMO73 did, which you can go back and watch it as well, which is still on his channel. It's pretty cool stuff. Aaron was actually going against another player, and Aaron had won the first game, and going into game 2, they shuffled each other's decks, cut them. Then Aaron drew his first 5 cards, and he mulliganed and drew his new cards, and then in response, the other player cut his deck and shuffled it, and because he was used to another card game he was playing, so he just instinctually, and he said because of nerves and stuff, he sort of instinctually went back to that old card game which you shuffled after mulligan. So because of that, he got an instant game loss, giving Aaron Miles the first place win. So that was a little bit unfortunate, but it was pretty funny to watch in real time. Second place was Joseph Ray with his Fair deck. Third place was Ryan Miles with another Lumia deck. I think all these Lumia decks are, for the most part, identical. Fourth place was Brandon Bramont with a Fair deck. Fifth place was Tyler Tompkins with another Fair deck. Sixth place was Tobey Cuvis, with a Lumia deck. Seventh place was Driz Foskin with an Ayu deck. Ayu got in there, snuck in there. Eighth place was Andre Demorin with another Lumia deck. And we also did, if you scroll to the very bottom of the article, we did an honorable mention for Victor Harris. He piloted an Evil Idrisil deck that was a Burn Tree deck that a lot of people on the stream, and including Oscar, really liked, and has been really popular ever since, of people wanting to build it and stuff. And I thought it was a really cool idea. Moving on to the ARG, The ARG was in Richmond, and it had 19 people, I believe it was. And the main ruler breakdown was 5 Lumia, 3 Yggdrasil, 3 Farer, and then broke down from there. And before I forget, if you guys want to hear us talk a little bit more about the ARG and GP and the decks and all that, we talked about it in our podcast we released yesterday, so you can just go to the most recent vid and check that out, or just stay to the end of this video and it'll pop up for you guys. But so first place here was Devin Constans with his Farer deck. Second place was Nate Satineri with a Lumia deck. Third place was Joe Owens with a Evil Yggdrasil deck. And then fourth place was Jocelyn with a Lumia deck. So a nice little spread there. And once again, not a super high attendance, but it's still kind of interesting to see what the top 4 and all that was. I'm looking forward to more ARGs. I'm hoping that the attendance goes up, so it'll be an even nicer spread to see happen. I'm looking forward to, hopefully our store owner had applied for an ARG States. So I'm fingers crossed that we're able to get it, and that would be super awesome to do that. And if so, I'll let you guys know. So if anyone wants to come over and play with us, that'd be super awesome if we got a lot of people going. But yeah, I think I missed 1 or 2 things of news. I keep notes and I switch computers and stuff. I'm all set now. Got my new computer set up and all that, so I'm back to normal. If there was an intro on this, if there was not, I'm only halfway back to normal technically then. But so if I missed a piece of news, my apologies. I'll post in the comments if I remember later. But thanks y'all for tuning in. Subscribe for more, and I'll see you guys next time.